Hello everyone, it's QQ Dragon here, and today's topic will be on the Arab-Israel Wars dating from 1948 to 2012, and how these wars may be closely related or affected by the Cold War. These conflicts mainly occurred due to the British lack of organization and the alliances between the superpowers with Israel and Arab countries, thus creating conflict between Arabs and Israelis for the following years to come. The major wars that will be touched upon are the 1948 to 49, the Israel War of Independence, and the Palestinian Nakba, 1956, Suez Crisis, and 1967, SixDay War, 1973, Yom Kippur War, 1982, Lebanon War, 2006, Second Lebanon War, and the 2012 Operation Pillar of Defense. These wars will show how a little careless mistake made by the British before decolonizing Palestine can turn into a full-scale war. Previous to the beginning of the First War, there was a Palestinian-Israel conflict, which later erupted into a civil war on the 29th of November 1947. Later, on 15th of May 1948, Israel declared independence, which angered the surrounding Arab countries. This in return transformed the civil war into a war between Israel and Arab states. Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, and expeditionary forces from Iraq entered Palestine to launch an attack on Israel. Originally, the Arabs were in the upper hand and have pushed Israel forces to the limit, but due to the UN intervention, there was a ceasefire. During the ceasefire, Israel was able to gain US assistance and rearm themselves, which was a turning point to the war. The fighting went on for 10 months, and by early 1949, the Israel forces managed to occupy the former Egyptian-Palestinian frontier. The war ended in armistice between February and July 1949 due to the overwhelming power of the Israel forces. Many Palestinians were displaced while more than 110,000 Palestinian refugees moved into Lebanon. This day was known as the War of Independence, while for the Arabs it was known as the Nakba, which means catastrophe. As a few years pass by, the Second Arab-Israel War, known as the Suez Crisis, begins. After World War II, Egypt President Gamal Abdel Nasser forced British troops to leave the Suez Canal, only to later nationalize it. With the nationalization of the Suez Canal, Egypt took away British and French trade route and denied access of Israeli ships through the canal with the blockading of the south port of Eilat. Due to this event, France and Britain struck with a deal with Israel to launch an attack on Egypt. Israel began their attack on October 29, 1956, with British and French forces joining in early November to take control of the Suez Canal. The British and French forces were pressured to withdraw due to Soviet, US, and the UN pressure. Later, Israel withdrew because of pressure from the US and the UN Emergency Force, which stationed in area in March 1957. Many Arabs believe in the war is a victory. Egypt later released the blockade, but still wouldn't let Israel use the Suez Canal. The third war, known as the Six-Day War, was the Third Arab-Israel War. It was an extremely brief war that lasted around 6 days from June 5 to 10. 1967, prior to the war, tensions were already growing between the Arab states and Israel. During this time, many Palestinian guerrilla groups located in Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan increased their attacks on Israel, making the repairs costly. Due to this, 1966, Israel attacked a Jordanian village in the West Bank. An air battle also began between Israel and Syria in April 1967, with many of Syrian planes destroyed. Soviet intelligence increased the tension in May telling Syria about a possible Israeli attack. As the tension grew, many criticized the Egyptian president for not supporting the other Arabian countries, so in return, Egypt replaced a blockade again on the port of Eliad. The Arabian countries mobilized an attack on Israel on June 5th. Israel responded to the mobilization by destroying more than 90% of Egypt's and Syria's air force. Within 3 days, Israeli forces had an overwhelming victory, taking over the Gaza Strip and Sinai Peninsula. Jordanians, warned by the Israeli president to the king of Jordan, opened a new front against Israel, shelling West Jerusalem. In response, Jordanians faced a Russian counterattack, and on June 7th, Jordanians were driven out of East Jerusalem and most of the West Bank. On June 7th, the UN called for a ceasefire, which Israel and Jordan accepted. As Egypt accepted it the following day, it took Syria until June 10th to accept the ceasefire. It was an overwhelming defeat for the Arabs in just 6 days, but in return, UN Resolution 242 was created asking Israel to hand back the territories taken to create lasting peace. As the 6-Day War ended, the Yom Kippur War of 1973, known as the Fourth Arab-Israeli War, began. After the UN Resolution 242, Israel rejected the terms and the fighting developed into a greater fully scaled war in 1973. On October 6, Egypt and Syria attacked Israel simultaneously to open up two fronts. Due to the surprise, Egypt was able to take back the Suez Canal, and Syrian forces were able to take back Golan Heights, which was lost in the 6-Day War. The Egyptian and Syrian assaults were extremely effective and different from the situation in 1957, which was beginning to exhaust Israel's reserved stocks of munitions. During the war, Soviets commenced a resupply effort supplying Egypt and Syria's armament. The US countered this resupply by establishing an emergency supply line to Israel. While the US supplied Israel, Israel was able to turn the tides of the war, disabling portions of the Egyptian air defenses. Meanwhile, the Golan Front, Israel was able to repulse the Syrian army at a heavy cost. The UN again intervened, creating many resolutions in hopes of ending the war between the Israelis and the Arabs. With the international pressure, the war finally ended on October 26th, and the formal ceasefire agreement was signed with Egypt on November 11th, and Syria later joined in on May 31, 1974. In an effort to maintain peace between Israel and Egypt, a disengagement agreement was signed on January 18, 1947. This agreement gave back the territories of Egypt, loosened Egyptian forces on the East Bank. In 1979, history was made as Egypt and Israel signed a permanent peace agreement, creating a normal diplomatic relationship between the two countries. Even though peace was achieved on one side, an unforgiven anger was brewing on the other side of Israel. This war, known as the Lebanon War of 1982, which began on June 6, 1982, from an invasion by the IDF, known as the Israel Defense Force, into southern Lebanon. The attack was justified by the IDF due to repeated attacks and counterattacks by the PLO, also known as the Palestine Liberation Organization, located in Lebanon. Another organization, known as the ANO, Abu Nidal's organization, which was a militant Palestinian organization, tried to assassinate Shlomo Argov, the Israeli ambassador to the UK. Israel used this particular reason to invade Lebanon and wipe out the PLO, even though ANO and PLO were enemies. After occupying southern Lebanon, Israeli forces surrounded PLO. While surrounded in West Beirut and constantly under heavy bombardment, PLO asked for multinational support and eventually gained a safe passage to later be relocated in Tripoli. By removing PLO influence and Syrian influence, Israel was able to set up pro-Israel government to create 40-year peace treaty between the two countries. But after the creation of the new government, the pro-Israel government president was assassinated, and instead Israel was forced to withdraw its forces in 1985. After the withdrawal of Israeli forces, once allied PLO and Syria, now enemies, began in Lebanese civil war, which would last until 1990, at which Syria would have full dominance over Lebanon. As a few years passed by, Hezbollah gained influence in southern Lebanon, moving even closer to the State of Israel. In October 2000, Hezbollah kidnapped 3 Israeli soldiers and held them for 4 years before returning their bodies to Israel in a prisoner exchange for 400 Palestinian and 30 Lebanese prisoners, include the Hezbollah leaders Sheikh Abd al-Kadim, Abid and Mustafa Dirani, as well as the remains of 59 Lebanese. The Second Lebanon War officially began on July 12, 2006, with Hezbollah launching an operation against Israel in attempt to pressure Israel into releasing more Lebanese soldiers. During the attack, Hezbollah captured 2 Israeli soldiers, while killing the rest. Hezbollah demanded Israel to release the captured soldiers in exchange for the 2 Israeli soldiers, and Israel responded by launching an offensive to recover the captured soldiers. Israel also launched a ground invasion of southern Lebanon and imposed an air and naval blockade. This conflict went on for a month until the UN Security Council intervened. The UN Resolution 1701 was created in an attempt to end the hostilities and was approved by both sides. The resolution called for the disarmament of Hezbollah and with the withdrawal of the IDF from Lebanon and replacing the UNIFIL, United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, to use force to ensure that there were no hostile activities. On 8th of September 2006, the Israeli blockade was lifted, and on the 1st of October, most of the Israeli troops withdrew from Lebanon. Through the UN Resolution 1701 was in place, the Lebanon government and UNIFIL wouldn't disarm Hezbollah. The 2 soldiers captured early in the battle were finally returned on 16th of July 2008. As a part of a prisoner exchange, though many Arab leaders criticized Hezbollah for his conflict, many Arabs praised Hezbollah's ability to fight against the IDF. The last conflict that occurred in the timeline was the Operation Pillar of Defense. In November 2012, the IDF launched the Operation Pillar of Defense in response to an attack by Gaza militants during the 24 hours periods of time. Operation Pillar of Defense goal was to disable the Gaza Strip rockets and disrupt the capabilities of the militant organizations. As the operation was ongoing, Hamas, the militant organization, intensified their rocket attacks on Israeli cities and the town, firing over 1,456 rockets to Israel. The UN Security Council quickly intervened and ended the conflict. With days of negotiations between Hamas and Israel, Egypt mediated a ceasefire on 21 of November, and both sides claimed victory as Israel stopped Hamas' ability to launch rockets, while Hamas ended Israel's option of invading Gaza. In conclusion, throughout the conflict between the Arabs and the Israelis, there were countless times where the superpowers intervened and caused more troubles than needed. The Arab-Israeli conflicts had a death toll over 100,000 Arab and Israeli deaths even before these conflicts. The problems mainly began because of Britain's lack of acknowledgement of the relationship between Jewish and Arabian communities, and therefore bringing years of wars to come. Even to today, Israel and Palestine are still in conflict without a plausible solution to ease the tensions between the two states. Though the UN exists to bring peace among the countries, the trouble grew beyond the capabilities of the superpowers, and the never-ending conflicts persist.